Hi, it's DENI and I'm master teaching again. You see, I'm stuck at home and I'm in the kitchen and I'm thinking about all the things I could have done, should have done, and what can I help you to do in the classroom. Sounds really odd, doesn't it? But that's how my life is. Boring. But there you go. So, there are a lot of people out there at the moment selling programs to make you an amazing teacher. The trouble is we've actually spent a lot of time overthinking a very natural process, and that is the process of learning. Not teaching necessarily, but learning. And we don't trust children to learn. In fact, we're quite hung up on the idea that I'm leaving the dog in and out the door. I'm quite sure that we're quite hung up on the idea of making learning much harder than it really is. You see, we worry that children won't learn to read and they're slow or they're not getting it the same as other children are, or they're just not doing it the way you want them to do it. So what we do is we panic and we start putting in place all kinds of interventions and ideas, ways of teaching that might help them, or you think might help them. Now, we don't actually really, we do have data about that, that's true. But having said that we have data about it, we need to remember that, for example, when a child learns to walk, they do just learn to walk. They have their own way of doing it, and they do it in their own time, and they notice that other people can walk, and they want to do that because it's a very natural thing for them to do. And they figure out how they can do it, and they do it. Now, the problem with us is that we actually think that we have to teach everything. Actually, we don't. What we have to do is set up situations in which children can learn. And that's what we're supposed to be really good at that. Teachers are supposed to be able to facilitate learning. But at the same time, there are a lot of pressures on for children to learn the things that they should learn by a certain stage. Well, we already know that not all children learn to read at the same time in the same way as others, and we already know that they don't learn to walk at the same time. The average age that a child learns to walk at is on their first birthday. But they don't all. And actually, the ones who didn't can walk now, can't they? Most of them. So, and does anybody actually not learn to walk if it's possible for them to do it, unless they are in very restricted circumstances and don't have any encouragement and don't understand why it's of importance and there's no motivation to walk, then maybe they might not. So why are we so poor at applying this knowledge that we already have to put some trust in our children and in their ability to learn to walk without us, and talk and read and do all the things that they could possibly do without us being prophets of doom? Oh, it's never going to happen. Oh, they're behind. Oh, they're not ever going to catch up, and they won't get their university examinations. And the kids 4, 3, 2, 1. That's my dog going off out there. He hasn't learned not to do that yet. I'm going to go out and yell at him in a minute and tell him to come inside. But meanwhile, back to the really important bit. The really important thing is that we need to trust the children, and we need to listen to them. And we need to listen to their questions and help them to find the answers to those questions. Because actually there's a very serious natural learning process going on. And you are actually, in many ways, having a negative impact on that by imposing your own values in the middle of the child's natural learning. So that's my thinking around this. Now, I want to know, I've talked before about, in New Zealand, we've had an extremely effective, world-renowned education system. We've been really high up on the scale of highly achieving countries in terms of education, and you know what? Now we're not. And now we're in a situation where we have shortage of teachers. Funny that. And we don't have as many successful students as we would hope. Now, why would that be? And it could well be because we have changed the way we educate. We have changed our thinking. We have changed our philosophy around education. A lot of people will blame inclusion, I think, including people with disabilities, etc., and kinds of things like ADHD, because I don't think they're issues. I think they could have been dealt with in a better way and more supportively. They needed more TAs and things like that, and more learning assistants. We need more programs for them. We definitely need more resourcing for them. No question about that. But I don't blame them for what's happening in schools. What I actually think is that we have got a fixation with stages of learning and when we should know what. It doesn't happen that way. I know, for example, that one of my sons was having great difficulty learning to read, a huge difficulty learning to read, and I was in panic mode about it. This is a long time ago. We're talking about 30 years ago now. And he was coming home, bringing the little box home, and I was reading them. And I got so infuriated by it all that I decided that I would do a whole day's teaching with him before school in the morning, because I knew that he wasn't going to do anything at school. And I did have a few ideas about the teacher being young and inexperienced and all kinds of things. And a few other ones as well. But the main reason he was not learning was because he had no motivation to learn. He wasn't interested. He wasn't gaining, couldn't see any purpose in it. And as soon as I gave him a purpose, which was for him to read The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and I wouldn't read it all to him, I just gave him little bits of it, and then he was like, I want to know what happened next. Read it yourself. But Mum, what's that word that... I'm not telling you, see if you can figure it out. If you can't figure it out, then I'll tell you. But I'm not telling you unless you give it a good try. So I'm down in the kitchen. I'm making dinner. He's up in the bedroom with his book. I took away all the other stuff that he did, which in those days was, not much, really. He had Lego. He had a lot of Lego. So I took most of that stuff away, and I wasn't mean about it. I didn't take it away permanently. I just sort of removed it from view to a great extent. And I gave him motivation by reading him the beginning of the story and left it at the most exciting point. But Mum, when are you going to read me the rest? When are you going to read me the rest? Well, I could, but you'll have to wait because I'm busy. But you could read some yourself, and that might be a good idea. And then if you don't know any words, you can ask me. But try first, okay? He could read amazingly within months, weeks even, because he read the whole lot, and then he read the whole series himself. So that's one of the things about our setting ourselves up and our children up for failure, because we start seeing them as failing. That's a fly. This is going to be one of those videos, isn't it? Anyway, so setting himself up for failure, or setting our children up for failure, is a really bad idea, because they actually see themselves in that light forever and ever in a day. And I've had huge problems trying to resolve those issues over the years. Don't do it to yourself. It's not worth it. And don't listen to other people who tell you negative things about your children. Do not listen to them. They don't have any right, for a start, to start telling you about your kids. So don't listen to that. Check it out, think about it, but don't immediately go, oh, they've said he can't read, he's got huge problems. There are ways around those problems. It might not be so much the child as the mismatch between the teaching and the learner, and the style that the child prefers. So think hard about that as well. More along the lines of what we're doing about these things, we're trying to give teachers more strategies to deal with kids, or to help kids who have got problems, and they work for some of them, but not for all of them. And not every child gets the opportunity. Your child might be one of those kids who's really good at hiding the things that they can't do. We're getting better as teachers. We're getting better at sorting that out, but it's still a long way to go. Kids are pretty clever about disappearing off to the toilet when there's the last thing, you're busy. They know you're busy in the classroom, etc. So we've now got a situation. When I've said that New Zealand was so high, we've now got a situation in New Zealand where we are buying other people's books. I'm not showing you the title. We are buying other people's books, and we are buying other people's programs from other countries to use in our country with our children who are from totally different cultures. And there's not a fit. Now, the other thing about that is that there is nothing, I have looked seriously, there is nothing in those programs that we don't already have. That expertise exists in our country. But unfortunately, because of what I call the minimalist approach to education in New Zealand, we have decided not to use the scaffolding of years of experienced teachers, and anyway, we can't get them because they're so disgusted by what's happened in terms of what people understand about teaching anymore. We've had mass exodus of experienced teachers. We've got very little foundation there for building an enrichment, or let's say an enriched idea of what education is, and to be able to teach to an incredibly deep level, which is what we were able to do previously. So my theory about this is that we actually need to go back a little bit and not chuck everything out. Choose the good bits and keep them. Evidence-based practice, data, research. I've said this before. If it was so bad before, how come we were so successful before and we're not now? What happened? Wisdom from above? I don't think so. Money not being spent? I do think so. I think that the approach that we were using previously, which was more holistic and more about child-centered learning in many ways, not for everybody, and certainly that needed tweaking, and a lot of things needed tweaking. I'm not saying it was perfect in any way at all, but some of the things that were being done were really, really good and had the results of some very enriched experienced teaching going on in classrooms. So when you went to school, if you're in your 30s or even 40s, if you went to school and you're in your 40s now, think back to what you could do and what you knew, and think back to what kids know now. Now, there is a huge difference because we have the influx of technology. That's not a bad thing. That's a brilliant thing. So why haven't we put those two models together instead of throwing one out and bringing one in? Why are we using only a science-based approach when actually we need to look at the deeper levels of aesthetics? We need to understand, we used to call it left brain, right brain. Whether we call it that anymore, I don't care. What I care about is, where are the arts? What is going to happen? Do you realise that all these people who have got an arts bent, or even a language bent to some extent, people who are good at drama, people who are good at music, people who are good at arts, people who think in an artistic way, people who are poets, those kinds of people are not valued. They're not going to be IT specialists. They're not going to provide for the economy in that way, which is where the move had to be. Now, all of that is true, but they are designers. They are people who have potential. We still need them. We need them to create digital music. We need them to document and help us to express ourselves. So I'm sorry, but really, you need to rethink education in this country. In New Zealand, we need a revamp, and I don't see it happening. I'm sorry to say that I really do not see it happening, because what I do see is that we have a huge influx of people coming in from countries that weren't doing all that well anyway, to replace teachers who were experienced teachers who were doing well, but didn't like the direction in which things were going, so they got out. Undervalued, not cared about, and having no agency and no say, and certainly no understanding of what it was they were doing. So I think we could create our own programs. I don't think we need to be buying them from overseas. I don't want to see schools spending huge amounts of money buying in programs and buying in PD from other countries. We have that experience in this country. Use it, invest in it, make it work. We can make New Zealand great again. Right, I'll go and put my orange face on. See you later, bye.